There I was having a grand old time playing through all the Simpsons games in chronological order, apart from Buffy the Space Mutants, oops, when a certain announcement was made. The Simpsons Tapped Out, a game that had been running for 12 years, was finally going to end. It wasn't just EA were going to stop updating the game with new content, they were going to shut down the servers. Tapped Out doesn't work unless you're connected to the server, which means the game would become unplayable. What this means is that if I didn't cover Tapped Out for ranking every Simpsons game now, then I may never be able to. That means I'll be looking at the Simpsons Tapped Out for this video, and the Itchy and Scratchy game will have to wait. For the rest of the video, I'm going to pretend that I covered Tapped Out in order, so the videos make sense when they're all stitched together after I've officially covered every Simpsons game. Sorry if that's a bit confusing and weird, but blame EA, not me. I'm pretty sure most people blame EA for a lot of things anyway. Okay, on to Tapped Out. It was strange that we got 3 different Simpsons mobile games from EA, but EA aren't exactly a company that got to where they are by thinking small. They went all in with the Simpsons game in 2007, and after dipping their toes in the water with their Simpsons mobile games, they were about to get another chance to go all in again. The third mobile game from EA, The Simpsons Arcade, released in 2009. The big games on mobile in 2009 were Angry Birds, Plants vs Zombies, and Doodle Jump. While the iPhone and other smart devices becoming more powerful allowed for more complex games, mobile gaming remained quite simple, with basic but addictive gameplay and cartoony bold graphics. They were games that you could spend a lot of time on but ultimately weren't that complicated. Things were about to change though, and in only a few short years, the mobile market would look similar on the surface but would completely change due to a shift away from a traditional monetization model to freemium. The simple and addictive cute looking games were reworked to allow more people to play them by making them free, but exponentially increase their profit potential by providing uncapped in-app purchases. Games like Candy Crush Saga showed just how much money could be made by using this method. The publisher of Candy Crush Saga, King, released the game using a freemium model in 2012. In 2011, the year before its release, their revenue was at around $62 million. For 2013, after Candy Crush had become a huge hit, their revenue had reached $1.8 billion. These developers that made nice little games for Facebook as basic time killers now had an ever-growing market for their games, with smartphones becoming cheaper and more accessible, as well as a way of making money with in-app purchases that eclipsed traditional AAA gaming on PC and console. And then we have EA, a company who had a well-known family-friendly IP with The Simpsons, a business model they could copy that was proving very profitable, and they already had EA Mobile, which included both publishing and development experience on mobile platforms. Around this time, EA Mobile was expanding, with a purchase of the Angry Birds and Cut the Rope publisher Chilingo in 2010, so they were primed to enter the mobile freemium market. In 2011, they also bought an American mobile games developer called Byte Games. It was Byte Games that would come up with the idea of the game that we're looking at today and would pitch it to the Simpsons creative team, that game being The Simpsons Tapped Out. The Simpsons Tapped Out released on iOS devices at the end of February 2012, before being released on Android a year later in February 2013, and lastly on Kindle in June 2013. There was a long wait between the iOS and Android releases, but there were server issues upon launch on the iOS, leading to the game being removed from the App Store in 2012, and then eventually the servers were taken offline in June. They eventually re-released the game in August 2012 and started providing content updates in September. Despite these launch issues, the game became a hit. In Q4 of 2012, Tapped Out had grossed $23 million, and even though it didn't work for several months, it was in the top 10 highest grossing iPhone games for 2012. After launching on other platforms and several updates, the game had earned over $100 million by the end of September 2013. This success kept the game going for years, with new updates coming at least once a month, until EA announced that the game would be shutting down after 12 years. It was taken off stores in October 2024, with the servers going offline in January 2025. While the game was successful for many years, reviews from the time were mixed. It sits at a 69 on Metacritic, with the user review sitting at a 6.6. The scores are quite typical for a mobile freemium game like this. Some people can get lost in these type of games, with them becoming something they fully commit to and spend money on to get those extra items. and other people heavily criticize these games due to the predatory monetization and the way they limit content. Despite being a mobile freemium game, The Simpsons Tapped Out is seen as one of the better Simpsons games, but definitely still received criticism from part of the gaming community. So, before the server shut down for good, I dived into the game to see how good or bad it really was. I did play it back when it first originally launched, but now it was time to give it a proper thorough look, to see if the final Simpsons game ever released ended up being the best one and how the freemium model affected EA's last Simpsons game. Tapped Out starts with a cutscene showing Homer playing a freemium game on his tablet at work, with him complaining about freemium games in general. Alarms start going off with the power plant eventually exploding, causing all of Springfield to fly away. This takes us into the game, with Homer standing in an empty patch of land which has a few bits of nuclear waste. We then begin the tutorial, which takes you through all the core mechanics of the game. Tapped Out is a city builder, using games like Farmville as a foundation for its gameplay. A more apt comparison may be a game called Trade Nations, a game similar to Farmville that Byte Games worked on previously. EA specifically called out Trade Nations in the press release when they purchased Byte Games, so it appears to have been the starting point for Tapped Out, as it's centered on building your own town and features similar mechanics and structure. With Springfield destroyed, your goal is to rebuild it by unlocking buildings and bringing back all the residents of the town. The core loop is as follows. Please strap in as I'm about to dump a lot of information at once, as this is both a simple game and a very complicated one. Your buildings will earn cash over time. You don't get this cash automatically, instead when there's an icon above the building, you can tap on it and the cash and XP will appear which you can collect. Each of the characters in your Springfield can be given tasks and that will also earn you cash and XP. Each task that you give them will give you different amounts of cash and XP, but each of them has a set amount of time to be completed. Once a character finishes a task, you can tap on them to collect the cash and XP from their completed task. The timers in the game occur in real time, so if you set your characters on task, you can close the game and log back in a few hours later when the tasks have been completed to collect all the cash and XP. The cash is used to purchase new buildings and new characters. The main characters you unlock will be paired with a building, so as an example, when you build Krusty Burger, you also unlock Krusty the Clown for your town. You will also need to unlock the ability to purchase these new buildings. These slowly unlock one by one as you play the game. These are unlocked either by leveling up, which is what the XP is for, or by completing quests. Quests are mini stories in the game, where you need to set characters a specific task and completing that task will advance the quest. To try and sum all this up, you're trying to build your Springfield by unlocking new characters and buildings, which you do by leveling up, completing quests and using cash. You do all this by setting your character's tasks to earn cash and XP, and tap on your buildings to collect the cash and XP they give out, which you have to wait for real-time timers to be able to do. A typical play session of Tapped Out involves collecting some cash and XP, reading character dialogue from any quest that you've completed, buying any new buildings and characters that you can afford, placing them in your town, and then setting new tasks for all your characters. Characters have different tasks of different lengths, so you can set the task based on when you believe you'll be playing the game next. You can set all your tasks to only be for a few minutes and keep actively playing the game if you wish, or if you're say playing the game before bed, you can set all your tasks to be 8 hours long so you can cash in those tasks when you wake up and start playing the game again in the morning. With Tapped Out being a freemium mobile game, it's designed to be easy to pick up and play to bring in players, but it's also quite complex beneath the surface, with different systems working together to make the game addictive and engaging and to give people a reason to spend their money in-game. The game starts with a tutorial that takes you through all the basics, how to set tasks, purchase buildings, and create extras for your Springfield like roads. The tutorial is a bit long, it takes about 15 minutes to complete and you don't get any freedom here. But you do get plenty of dialogue between Homer and Lisa as they discuss rebuilding the town, and Apu and Professor Frink make appearances. Even though this tutorial is very hand-holdy, I prefer this front-loaded tutorial that explains everything, so it's completely clear how the game works and how you control that. Everything here is touch-based, so you're tapping on the screen to interact with the game. You tap to complete tasks, you tap to get money and XP, and you tap to use the menus to select buildings and place them in your town. I don't need a city builder like this to have an organic tutorial. It's much better to be direct, so you understand the basics and can easily navigate the game so you can start building your own version of Springfield. After the tutorial, you're free to rearrange your town as much as you like and start earning more buildings and characters to grow your Springfield properly. With this game being 12 years old and I was playing it just before it was shut down forever, things get a bit messy after the tutorial. The last action you perform in the tutorial is building Flanders' house and unlocking Ned Flanders, which shortly leads into building Cletus's farm and unlocking Cletus for your town. Unlocking these buildings and characters is part of the core content for rebuilding Springfield, but on top of this, you have a tutorial on adding friends, there's a message about the game shutting down, you're given a premium item, the Skyfinger Monument that was originally a reward for an event from 2019, and a brand new event involving an AI talking to the Simpsons directly kicks off. The tutorial did a good job of keeping things focused, so you can start building your town bit by bit once you've finished it, but they throw way too much at you way too quickly afterwards. I haven't even mentioned everything yet, like you also unlock the ability to complete previous events, and the Skyfinger Monument has its own questline about Homer writing a limerick for Skyfinger, which is supposed to represent the player as they are the one tapping on Springfield. The content here is split between the original base content and all the new things that have been added over the years, and they don't merge together very well. You go from building Krusty Burger and getting Krusty the Clown back in your town to the entire Simpsons family arguing with an AI about the game shutting down. These extra quests and events include characters you haven't unlocked yet, and it removes some of the charm from the opening moments of the game. Without considering the quality of the writing in these quests for the time being, they didn't seem to find a good way of protecting that first time experience, and there's tonal whiplash if you simply complete all the quests that are available to you. As part of the shutdown, the game throws lots of premium extras at you, which is all to enable you to unlock as much content as you want. There's a donut factory, a donut mech, Cosmo Foods, a building that gives you free land expansions, and God. All this content has the same problem, which is you're just starting to build your town, and having God and a donut mech wandering around is weird and out of place. I don't want to criticize this too much, as they had a very good reason for doing this, as they wanted to give people a way to unlock as much as they wanted before the game disappeared, but it does somewhat distract from the appeal of the game when you're first playing. Once you have God though, he has a 24-hour task that gives you 777,777 cash, which means you can use this task over and over again to have as much money as you want. This is the reason you're given God so early, to make sure you have as much cash as you need. As I wanted to try and have a more pure tapped out experience and didn't want to cheat, I only used this task once to test it out and that was it. I tried as much as I could to not exploit the extras they give you, and I wanted to progress as naturally as possible. I did keep all the free premium content that the game gave me, so my time with the game wasn't one-to-one with the typical tapped out experience, but hopefully it's close enough for this video. Right then, so after building Cletus's farm in the Quickie Mart, we have two extra ways to make more money. Using Cletus's farm, you can plant different crops, which will earn you money after they finish growing and are harvested. There is also the Quickie Mart, where every 6 hours you can scratch an itchy and scratchy ticket to earn money. The cash you earn depends on what symbols you get on the ticket. Both these activities require spending cash to do so, but it's a very small amount, so you'll usually have enough. The itchy and scratchy tickets always give you more cash than it costs to buy a ticket, so it's always worth doing. A new quest called Sideshow Bob Has Escaped Again also triggered when I reached level 6, where Sideshow Bob will start appearing in your Springfield. He quickly runs around and will hide for short bursts, and you have to catch him multiple times to complete the quest. Once you catch him enough times, he becomes a permanent member of your town as a proper character and you can assign tasks to him. He appears somewhat randomly. According to the tapped out wikis, he has a 10% chance of appearing, although I found he showed up about once a day. The core game is still completing quests to earn cash, to earn characters and buildings, to expand your town, to be able to earn more cash, but they add little wrinkles like this to the process early on. None of these are that engaging on their own, but they do help break up what you're doing when you boot up the game to check on your town each day. During my first 7 days with Tapped Out, I was able to reach level 9 and took a few buildings and a road and turned that into something that was starting to look like a mini Springfield. You start to unlock more customization options early on as you level up. Alongside being able to move buildings to wherever you want, you can create your own roads, Unlock different floor types like pavements, and you're able to create rivers that will automatically turn any roads that go over them into bridges. You get a range of decorations as well, so you can add different trees and plant life, and there's fences to use which help make your town feel, well, more like a town. In the early game, there are several quests that unlock a few normal houses, most of them being named after the colour they are, like the brown house, so the game pushes you to build up a residential area early on. These early days with the game are some of the most fun, ignoring all the extra content it throws at you and the bloat. Every day that you log on, you're able to complete quests and unlock more stuff. You're always progressing forward and achieving something. It's not just that though, but the game is delivering on its promise of being able to create your own version of Springfield. It may be small after day 7, but you already have several iconic buildings, and you can take your time to plan the smaller details and figure out where you want everything to be. I had a little evergreen terrace with the Simpsons and Flanders houses, I was building out the retail areas with the Krusty Burger, and I was starting to build a river through the town, which went past a mini town square section where I had put the Skyfinger monument. I wasted a bit too much cash on decorations rather than new buildings and characters, but that's okay because it was my choice to do that and I wanted to make my version of Springfield look a bit nicer. In the early game, you're still engaging with the core gameplay loop, with the payoffs for doing so being obvious and direct, which makes it rewarding and fun to play. It's nice to boot up the app on your phone when you have a spare moment, in order to earn extra XP and cash by tapping on buildings and setting tasks for your characters, which helps you progress, all while you're checking in and updating your Springfield. It is difficult to play it for long periods though due to the timers, where a lot of the time you need to set longer tasks, and at that point you might as well just put the game down and come back later. While I would prefer to play the game for as long as I wanted each time, and not be blocked by the long timers, there's a part of me that wants to praise this aspect and design choice to a certain degree. Video games are an interactive medium which have been evolving and changing ever since they were created. Video games have been such a copycat industry that innovation usually comes from specific titles that do well and then have a large effect on other games, as that game has opened the door to new types of experiences. Sometimes video games have to come kicking and screaming from traditions though, like with live systems, and even ridiculous things like demo modes for home console games. But video games as interactable experiences should try new things and not stick to accepted conventions. I don't just mean AAA games should be more experimental and not as formulaic. Mobile gaming is a completely different way for people to experience video games, and phones allow for things that couldn't be done before. Having a powerful device on you all the time that has a touchscreen and is connected to the internet allows for different types of games that could never exist prior. The best example of exploring these possibilities and it then becoming a huge success is Pokemon Go, but games like The Simpsons Tapped Out were creating new ways to use mobile phones for games based on what was seen before on Facebook. Instead of playing a more hardcore game non-stop all evening, you can check in during the day and set up rewards for yourself to claim later while enjoying your own creation that you're carrying around with you. Someone who wants a more traditional video game isn't going to appreciate it or care that much, but mobile gaming was something relatively new in 2012, and I think it's perfectly valid to explore these different approaches to gameplay and break away from certain norms within gaming. The willingness to ignore the established norms in video games is something I like about these type of games, but there is a bit of a dark side to this type of design, which takes me to after day 7 with Tapped Out and the next couple of weeks playing the game. At first, the timers are quite short. This is mostly for onboarding purposes. A character's job or building being fully built only takes a few minutes to help you understand the mechanics and keep you engaged with the game in those early moments. It doesn't take long before the standard for creating a building becomes 4 hours, and most quests for characters will take several hours to complete. The first few buildings you unlock will give you cash after a few minutes, but as the price of things go up, the cash from these buildings become less useful, and future buildings with higher payouts take many hours before you can tap on them. You want to get as much cash and XP as you can, which means checking into the game regularly. I fell into a certain pattern when playing Tapped Out. I would play the game first thing in the morning as part of my usual messing around on my phone when I first woke up, then later I would play it during my lunch break, followed again after I finished work, and then one final time just before I went to bed. I played 4 times a day, each session being about 5 to 15 minutes long. I kept this schedule every day to progress as much as possible, and because I was consistent with it, I was able to plan for when I would next log on. In the morning, I would set all my characters' tasks to be 4 hours long, as I knew I'd be logging in again in around 4 hours time. When I was going to bed, I would set my task to be 8 hours, as I knew I'd be asleep during that time. Each character also have tasks which are 12 and 24 hours long, so you might be thinking, why not just log in once or twice a day and use those longer tasks? Well, it's in part because the buildings that you need to tap on have different fixed timers and you can't affect those, but it's also due to the balancing of the cash and XP rewards for tasks. Let's use Lisa as an example. Her 12-hour task is go to Sunday school, which gives you 420 cash and 100 XP. The 4-hour task, play the sax, gives 175 cash and 45 XP, and the 8-hour task, babysit Rod and Todd, gives 275 cash and 70 XP. The 12-hour task gives you 420 cash and 100 XP, but if you instead complete the 4-hour task 3 times over those same 12 hours, you'll get 525 cash and 135 XP. The cash and XP rewards scale, so the longer the task, the less cash and XP you earn per minute. It encourages you to play more frequently, as the more you play, the shorter you can make the task you set and you'll earn more cash and XP each day. For Lisa, her 1-hour task is shop at the Quickie Mart, which earns 70 cash and 17 XP. The 12-hour task gives the equivalent of 35 cash and 8 XP, so around half. Completing the 1-hour task 12 times gives double what using the 12-hour task does, so logging in 12 times noticeably increases what you get. I settled on 4 times a day as a compromise, between wanting to earn more cash and XP, but not wanting to have to log in every hour of the day. There's something that doesn't feel right about this system, which can make the game less fun to play, so why is that? On the face of things, this is how any video game works. The more time you play a game, the more you progress in it. Someone who plays a game more often than another person is going to be further in that game. That makes sense. There's nothing unfair about that. Someone who invests more time into something will normally get more out of it. The Simpsons Tapped Out is strange though because there's no skill involved to play it. Due to the nature of the gameplay where it's a simplified city management sim, there's no challenge to what you're doing. It's tapping and menus. The only blockers to progress require you to set tasks and tap on buildings. It lacks the city management elements of something like SimCity, as you're not managing Springfield, it's all about unlocking content to then place it down in whatever way you like. This is great in a way because it makes the game much more accessible, as anyone can play this game with its touch-based controls and no skill checks, which is another positive about it, and this is another way of designing games that's very much worth exploring. You don't need quick reaction times or deep knowledge of mechanics, anyone can pick up and play Tapped Out. When there's no skill though, it upsets the balance in terms of what feels fair when it comes to time invested versus skill. Everyone has their own skill level when playing video games, and beating a game depends on both how much time you can invest and how much skill you have. Someone who's great at video games can beat something in less time, or if that same skill player wants to increase their play time, they can increase the difficulty or go for a higher completion percentage like with collectibles or extra bosses. Someone who's not as good can make up for their lesser skill by playing more of the game to improve at it to eventually beat it, or if they want to preserve their time, they can lower the difficulty or use a walkthrough. The point I'm trying to make is that the player chooses how they want to tackle beating a game based on their skill, time and preferences. The same game can be experienced by different people in their own way, by them choosing how they approach it. Someone with little free time but are good at games can blast through something in the spare time they do have, but a young kid who is much worse at games are able to invest a ton more time into the same game as they have much more spare time on their hands. With Tapped Out being centered around timers, this choice and balance between skill and time for the way you approach the game is removed. The game does have choice. You decide which timers to set and how often you log in, but you're actively rewarded for logging in more, which means conversely you're effectively punishing people for playing less frequently or trying to play the game in a way that works best for them. Being able to engage with video games how you want, in both how much time you choose to invest and the level of challenge you set yourself, is part of what makes games an enjoyable hobby, and it's something that Tapped Out removes for the sake of the timers and trying to get people to engage with the game as much as possible. Higher skill or adjusting settings do not make up for a lack of time in Tapped Out. The person who plays more frequently gets more. You don't engage with the game on your terms. You're engaging with it the way it wants you to. You invest time into it frequently to get rewards, and the more you invest, the more rewards you get, turning the game into something that now has a schedule. There's a word that already exists for this type of system, and that's work. You aren't playing the game as a hobby. If you want to get more cash and XP, then you need to repeat the same actions day after day as frequently as possible while finishing quests that require doing tasks that take hours to complete. This starts off okay, but as you get more characters, quests and buildings, it makes playing the game become a routine, something you're doing at fixed times. If you want to play the game for longer on a certain day when you have more free time, that doesn't matter, as you earn so little by staying in the game that it's hardly worth how much effort it takes to keep tapping, and you're always going to have to wait for buildings to finish and quest tasks to complete, which takes hours. The game can still be cool, you're still getting Simpsons characters and buildings that you recognise, and you're still creating your own Springfield, but every player at Tapped Out will reach a certain point due to how its systems work and come to different realizations. Even if you start only playing it a couple times a week, which is probably healthier to do, the longest task timers are 24 hours, so you'll progress slowly and have little to do, so you'll likely start playing it more if you actually like the game. This leads you to either being worn out by the grind and work-like nature of the gameplay and stop playing, or this is your life now, and you like the game enough to keep going to see everything the game has to offer. There is still enjoyment to be had, but it depends on your relationship with the gameplay loop with the timers and how much you value what you get out of the game. I want to compare Tapped Out to cooking a meal, but cooking requires skill and knowledge to make something nice. Tapped Out is closer to ordering a takeaway. For takeaway, you order food, wait a set amount of time, and then it'll arrive. You'll still enjoy the food you get, but the process of ordering it and waiting is mindless, and this process is what Tapped Out is asking you to at least somewhat like doing, as it's what you're engaging with to unlock everything. I found myself getting burnt out by the game, and my enjoyment was all over the place, sometimes really liking it, and sometimes not wanting to play it at all. I didn't always enjoy it, but it's up to each person to say whether the input you need to put into the game by playing it regularly is worth the output you get, which is your town, and is something that you find rewarding. There is another route that a player may take to unlock more content, involving purchasing donuts with real money, but before jumping onto that landmine, let's shift gears a bit. Let's take a look at Tapped Out as a Simpsons game. There are numerous types of city builders like this on mobile, so it's important to ask, how well does Tapped Out represent The Simpsons itself? Tapped Out is one of two Simpsons games to feature properly animated cutscenes that completely match the show. The first thing you see when starting the game is an original scene showing Homer blowing up the nuclear power plant, and you get smaller cutscenes throughout the game. These cutscenes are mostly to tell the story, although the core plot is very thin. It starts with Homer and Lisa trying to rebuild Springfield after it blows up, and they are slowly able to get more people back into the town, who then request new buildings, and even more people make their way back. This results in the rest of the core Simpsons family coming back one by one as you level up. The final family member you unlock, Maggie, is available at level 26, although she was originally added as part of the Winter 2015 update. Completing the quest related to Maggie will lead to a giant quest, The End of the Beginning, that aims to wrap up the main storyline. As this was added back in 2015, the game originally didn't have a complete story, and was more open-ended so it could serve as a backbone to allow as much content to be added as needed. The End of the Beginning starts with Maggie being a bit clingy with Marge, so they decide to put her into a preschool. After Homer and Marge struggle to get her into one, Homer uses the fact that he blew up the town like a threat to get her in. This results in Homer doing this all around town to get his own way, telling people that he'll blow up the town unless he gets what he wants. Mr. Burns gets wind of this and tells Homer that he wasn't the one that blew up the town, as Homer's workstation isn't even plugged in anymore due to how incompetent he is. Homer stops being able to boss people around, but they find out that Maggie knows why the power plant actually blew up. Mr. Burns reveals that there was a daycare in the power plant that was managed by a robot called Rosa. After some pretty tedious quests to rebuild Rosa, they watch the security footage from before the power plant blew up. The video reveals that Gerald, the baby with the one eyebrow, sabotaged Rosa, which Maggie then rode into the core, and that caused the explosion which destroys Springfield. It's nice that they explained what happened after so much time, but I can't say I enjoyed any of this. It's great to see animation from the show, that's always going to be cool, but the explanation to what really happened is so convoluted and not funny that it feels like it's straight from a modern Simpsons episode. It's pretty forced, but I don't want to dwell on it too much because the overall plot is intentionally a second thought in this game. While it would be nice to have a decent overall story, it's not the focus, as it's really all about the individual quests and the dialogue. The lead writer for The Simpsons Tapped Out is Stuart Burns, an executive producer and writer for The Simpsons who joined the staff in 2002. Before then he worked on Futurama, writing several of the early episodes, and eventually would be the writer for the Futurama game on PS2 and Xbox. He also worked on Spyro: A Hero's Tale. He oddly didn't seem to work on The Simpsons game, but is still someone with experience with video games and had worked on The Simpsons for 10 years before Tapped Out came out, so it's a very logical choice for him to be the lead writer. Throughout the lifetime of Tapped Out, multiple other writers from The Simpsons got involved, like Matt Selman, Jeff Westbrook, Matt Warburton, John Kern, and several more. With the game receiving regular updates over the years, the writing staff was rotated, so different writers handled specific updates. There were external writers hired as well, but Stuart Burns was in charge of the game's story and dialogue. There aren't many full cutscenes in the game, and they're all quite short and far apart, so the majority of the jokes are done using dialogue. There is voice acting, but they don't read out the text. Instead, the voice acting is used for one-off lines that characters say when you interact with them. Every quest has dialogue associated with it, so pretty much every time you log in, you either complete a quest which will have dialogue, or you're starting a new quest by clicking on a character with an exclamation mark above them, and there'll be dialogue to kick off that quest. The presentation is very limited. It's text with a few different reaction images of the characters' heads, but considering this limitation, they make the most out of the dialogue. The writing as a whole is decent. The characterization is spot on, and each conversation is filled with jokes, and thanks to the actual Simpsons writing staff being involved, the jokes aren't bad. The storylines for the quests are largely original. At the beginning it's mostly about the town being rebuilt, but as you get more and more characters, the stories become more one-off events, or a new character getting back into the swing of things after being brought back into Springfield. For example, after Martin plays the loot for Bart, Bart realizes they need bullies again, which allows you to build Nelson's house and unlock Nelson. Nelson straight away starts bullying kids, which gets him put into detention. After serving detention 3 times, Nelson then has to help out groundskeeper Willie, which leads to him stealing coleslaw to throw at Milhouse's house, then playing the guitar, ending the quest with Bart, Milhouse and Martin all miserable because of Nelson. The game will reference events from the show fairly often, but the storylines are mostly new, or if they do directly retell something from the show, they're quickly to point it out themselves. This is a new Springfield, where all the characters are aware they're being unlocked, and also aware of the previous events in the show. The writing is quite good, but the humour isn't going to appeal to everyone, which is my way of saying that it didn't appeal to me. It matches the writing style of The Simpsons, but it matches the writing of modern Simpsons. The show had reached season 24 by the end of 2012. We're past the golden age, and we're even a few years removed from the film back in 2007. Having the game full of smaller stories does make the writing much more palatable compared to the worst of modern Simpsons, as this isn't like a full-length episode where you have to go through different stages of a plot. The focus here is on a few quick-fire jokes that you read before you go back into the gameplay, which works. Humour is very subjective. If you enjoy this era of Simpsons, then there's lots to enjoy with the humour in Tapped Out. There are certainly people who enjoy the later episodes of The Simpsons, and there are different generations of Simpsons fans who have their own sense of humour. I might not get much out of season 24, but millions of people watch those episodes, and for those who enjoy them, the writing in Tapped Out is an easy recommend, and you'll get a lot of laughs from these jokes. For me though, who prefers the earlier seasons, I still get a laugh here and there, but there's one thing about the writing that really brings it down, and that's the fourth wall jokes. The game is obsessed with fourth wall jokes, mostly done by Homer, with characters being overly self-aware and referencing things outside of the world that the game is taking place in. The opening cutscene has Homer playing a game similar to Tapped Out and heavily criticizing it, as a jab towards freemium games as a whole. The final update for the game involves an AI from the future telling everyone that the game is being shut down, and the quests are largely the Simpsons talking to each other and the AI reflecting on the game itself. It's all very meta, but in a way that I don't think works. The amount that Tapped Out uses these jokes removes a lot of the surprise factor with them. The rate that you read these type of jokes in the game makes the humour feel closer to Family Guy than it does The Simpsons. For me, it's a reminder that the type of humour in The Simpsons has changed beyond what I enjoyed about the show. They've always had fourth wall jokes, but it was never to this extent where they're pointing the finger at themselves and mocking what they're doing all the time. It creates a soulless quality to the writing, as the jokes stop being clever. It's frequent winks and nods to the audience that the older episodes were much more deliberate about. A good example of this is the quest you get for reaching level 30, which involves Marge and Herman storming City Hall. The last bit of dialogue for this quest is the characters getting confused to why they're doing any of this, apologising to the player for the update, and promising that level 31 will be a lot better. It's terrible. I don't know who would enjoy such an unsatisfying and lazy ending to a quest. With how long the show had been running by 2012, and how diluted the characters had become, using fourth wall jokes is a logical thing to do if you just need one-off jokes to make people laugh, using some references that you know the fans will get. Again, overall the writing isn't bad, but each Simpsons game reflects the era of the show for when it was released, and with Tapped Out coming out in 2012, and then lasting 12 years, the style of writing very much reflects the modern era and can be seen with where they choose to derive humour from. At a talk at E3 2019, Matt Selman said that the essence of Tapped Out has been how much can we insult Tapped Out as much as possible. They were likely exaggerating a bit to be entertaining as they were talking in front of a crowd, but you feel this approach in the game's writing. It's all a bit sad in the end. Rather than someone trying to be entertaining by writing good jokes for something they're passionate about, it's them making a freemium game and poking fun at what they're doing. It's not offensively bad, more depressing. It's not clever to do something that you think isn't good, but point the finger at yourself like you're in on the joke too. Most people probably won't notice this approach to the writing, as ultimately it's just a string of quick-fire jokes to add a bit of humour to a mobile game, and all the dialogue can be skipped. But I would say it's confirmation that the team behind the game are out of touch to why some of the classic funny Simpsons episodes remain so funny after all these years. It's still a positive that the actual Simpsons team got so involved with the game for so many years, but when it's the same team behind the modern episodes, it means you get the same style of writing, which isn't for me. We also have the voice acting. The voice actors from the show return for Tapped Out, which has been a trend for Simpsons video games ever since the beginning. The characters talk whenever you interact with them, like tapping on them and assigning them tasks. Each character has a few lines that they randomly say when you do this, and there's a mix of brand new lines and some lines being ripped directly from episodes. Characters like Homer have pretty much exclusively brand new lines, but minor characters like God only use lines from the episodes, in particular for God, the season 4 episode Homer and the Heretic. Not all characters have voices, but it's mostly for understandable reasons, like Edna Krabappel, who was retired as a character after her voice actor Matricia Wallace passed away, although Edna was added to the game in October 2012, a year before Matricia sadly passed, so maybe she just didn't agree to voice her in the game. There are quite a few characters that don't have any voice acting, but most of these are characters that only appeared in one episode, like Hank Scorpio. With there being so many characters in the game that were voiced by guest stars originally, it's hard to expect them to get all these people back to voice them in the game, or to pay all those people to use their voice lines. It may be a blessing that some of the characters are mute, as the voice acting we got is very mixed. We're talking about The Simpsons in 2012, so the characters are starting to sound noticeably different. Bart's voice lines are strangely off, like he's too high-pitched or something.
Aw, jeez. Get bent. Cowabunga!
The worst voice acting comes from Harry Shearer. People like to talk about Marge's voice in the modern episodes, and it does sound rough, but Harry Shearer's characters have sounded wrong for years now, and it's sad to hear the worst version of the voices in Tapped Out. Flanders is okay, but Smithers, Lenny, and Ken Brockman sound terrible. Harry Shearer for some reason screams most of his lines in an irritating way, and Smithers, Lenny, and Brockman all have voice clips which is just them screaming at you.
Ah! What was I talking about? Ah! That is a gun. Ah!
Later in the game, when you have lots of characters and you need to assign tasks to all of them, you get bombarded by voice lines, and the audio becomes a complete mess. It's a mobile game, so you can always mute, but it's depressing how having the original cast was such a strong point for so long with the Simpsons games, and now for the last Simpsons game to ever be released, it's a reminder that the voice acting isn't as good as it used to be. This isn't just the voice actor's fault though. The sound design shouldn't allow for so many repeated lines to be thrown at the player, and certain lines just needed to be cut. The comic book guy has a line about loneliness and cheeseburgers being a dangerous mix, and it's so drawn out that it overlaps with other dialogue and isn't funny for how much you hear it.
Oh, loneliness and cheeseburgers
Okay,
are
here
a
goes
dangerous mix.
Okay.
The voice acting isn't all bad. There's still a few good lines here, and I'd rather have the actual cast be present than not, but the quality is worse than you would expect for something official like this. Regardless of the writing style and the inconsistent voice acting, Tapped Out ends up being the most comprehensive collection of Simpsons characters and lore ever made. Even outside of video games, there's nothing that compares to Tapped Out with how much Simpsons is crammed into it. The game started with just 20 levels to progress through, but that got expanded to 939 by the end, with monthly updates adding more and more content. The impressive part is that even by the end of my time with the game, I was still unlocking recognizable characters. There is no other sitcom with a range of characters like The Simpsons, and Tapped Out takes full advantage of that. There are over 800 characters available, including alternative costumes for some of the main cast. As soon as I saw it, I had to unlock the Donut Head costume for Homer. It's been in other Simpsons games before, but it's such a classic look that I had to have it. They did end up adding original characters into the game, mostly designed for specific event themes, but they pulled in as many references as they could to form all the updates. Thanks to the art style being 2D and trying to match the animation style of the show, this is the ultimate representation of the Simpsons universe. If you stick with the game long enough, you will be able to build a really impressive version of Springfield, full of recognizable characters who all had their own questlines to complete, with an eye-watering amount of buildings to place into your town. The visuals can be a little bit off from time to time with the characters. The artwork can sometimes look a little bit off, and the characters all have different animations for tasks that you can have them do, and some of these animations can look a bit strange. You'll only notice the animations being off if you zoom into the characters. From up above as you're observing your town, it's not a problem and it looks great. Due to just how close it looks to the show, anything that's a bit off feels uncanny, but this is a minor complaint, as the game really does look great. A city builder like this, where it's so full of Simpsons content, it makes it the ultimate Simpsons game in a lot of ways. They found a way to cram in years and years of history for the show, and then they give you the tools to take all this content to build Springfield in whatever way you want. I'm not the most creative person when it comes to these games, but it doesn't take much to go online and see how great you can make your Springfield. It definitely contains the potential to make some amazing looking towns, if you're willing to invest the time to grind out unlocking all the content. That doesn't mean there aren't limitations to what you can do. You can get a lot of things to place down, but you can't customize any individual elements. Like if you wanted to change the color of a roof on a building, there's nothing like that here. You're placing fixed objects into an empty space, and that still gives you a lot of freedom, but it gives the game a ceiling in terms of what you can create. The Springfield Elementary School building will look exactly the same in everybody's town, which means it will feel like the one from the show, but self-expression becomes a bit capped in Tapped Out. Everyone is making an alternative version of Springfield, not brand new towns using the Simpsons art style, which makes it a bit harder to recommend if you only care about the city builder gameplay. As an example of this, someone tried to recreate Springfield from the Simpsons Hit and Run in Tapped Out. They did a pretty good job, and if you know Hit and Run well, you can recognize the key landmarks and their locations. Even though Tapped Out is all about building Springfield as its core hook, there's lots of things they couldn't recreate. There's no moving vehicles in Tapped Out, so they had to place static ones instead. There's no curved road, so there's lots of corners, as the roads in Tapped Out are built in a fixed grid, and you can't change their size. There's also no slopes or changes in elevation, so the whole town ended up being flat. It's still cool that someone did this, but it exposes the limitations of the game. Even though the whole point of the game is to build a Springfield, you arguably can't faithfully recreate one of the most famous depictions of the town. Some of this might be because it's a mobile game, but it's hard not to think about a version of Tapped Out that gave you a lot more freedom so you could really build more creative towns. Moving on to the different updates themselves. For how many years this game was live, there's a crazy amount of updates and I simply can't cover them all. We're talking about 12 years of regular content updates, and I only played the game when it first came out and again when it was being shut down, so I've missed far too much. Instead, I'm going to focus on the 4 main expansions that were released in the first few years, which were all available as base game content in the last few months that the game was online. In June 2013, they released the Squidport update. By expanding your town enough to reach the sea, you unlock the Sea Captain and can start building a Squidport. You can't add buildings directly to the water. Instead, you need to build boardwalk planks, which you then place on the water, and you can put buildings on top of those. To build up the Squidport, you need to create boardwalk planks and complete quests to unlock new buildings that are exclusive to the Squidport, like the Itchy and Scratchy store and the Frying Dutchman. This is a really nice idea. You're expanding your town in a new way that's visually pretty different, having it being on a dock instead of dry land. The Squidport comes directly from the show, although most of the buildings from this update come from the episode My Sister, My Sitter, which is one of my least favourite episodes, so some of the references did go over my head. The Squidport is great because it helps create a new distinct area in your town, but the problem with this is the way you build up the boardwalk. You build it up piece by piece, where selecting the Squidport sign allows you to build one square, which costs cash to do, and then takes a certain amount of time for that to finish. Early on it's cheap and the time limit is short, but as you build the Squidport more, the price and timers start going up. It got to the point where I didn't want to carry on the quest anymore. If you want a new building for your Squidport, you first have to purchase the land on the sea by grinding cash, then make boardwalk pieces which you have to have enough money for, and then wait hours for it to complete, and then you have to have enough money to purchase the actual building itself, and then after placing it down, it then takes hours to build. One boardwalk piece is technically enough to place a building, but there won't be room for much else, so if you want your Squidport to look aesthetically pleasing, then you're going to need to build at least 2 boardwalk pieces per building. By adding this extra step of making the boardwalk pieces, it turns the whole thing into a grind. When you're trying to decide between using your time and cash to improve the rest of your Springfield, or use it to slowly add boardwalk pieces to your Squidport, it becomes hard to care about the Squidport. I wanted my port to connect like a rectangle and have a body of water in the middle, but my port ended up being unfinished, as after I went through the Squidport questlines, I lost interest, which is a shame because it really is a fun idea. If they weren't so stingy with the boardwalk pieces and gave you more freedom, the Squidport could be something really cool. With enough time, you can make a really interesting Squidport, but it requires a lot of patience. It's okay as it is, it just feels too limiting due to the grind. Only 1 month after Squidport, there was the Krustyland update in July 2013. This unlocked a new sub-area you could travel to using the Krustyland shuttle, where you could build your own Krustyland theme park. Originally, you had a separate area that was disconnected from the rest of Springfield where Krustyland was located. But in May 2018, as part of the Itchy and Scratchy Land update, Krustyland was moved into the main Springfield and it no longer had a dedicated space. I can't speak to what people thought about this back in 2018, but when playing Tapped Out in 2024, this was an awful move. I didn't want to engage with this expansion at all, as I didn't have the space for it. I did eventually build the entrance to Krustyland, but it's because the game forced me to, as it's required as part of the Maggie quest which revealed the mystery of why Springfield exploded. The reason I didn't have space for it is because of the land expansion system. Springfield is split into a grid, and you start with a small area to build on. To unlock more space to build, you need to use cash to buy the grayed out parts of the grid that's all around your Springfield. You buy more and more land as time goes on, which you fill with new content you unlock, and that's how your town naturally grows in size. The big problem with this system is the way the land is valued. Each square has a different value assigned to it, and the value increases as you get further and further away from the starting point. That's a sensible idea. You earn more money as you get more characters and buildings, so the price of land should increase to match, but the price is different depending on what square you're looking at. 2 squares right next to each other can have a different price, and if you expand in the wrong direction, which is going east and west rather than north and south, you can pay much more to expand your town than someone who expanded differently. The cost shoots up very quickly, and prices become around the same as new buildings, making land just too expensive. The pricing doesn't feel justified. A new building and character feels much more valuable than an empty piece of land, but you have to buy the land first. When someone hits this dilemma, it directly forces the player to make a choice. Do you try and reduce how much land you buy and force your buildings much closer together to increase your earnings, or do you grind more in order to maintain the plan for your town and make it the way you want? In a game that should be about building the Springfield that you want to make, you're punished for doing so because it's better to cram all your buildings together in order to earn more cash and XP and spend less money on land. Even if you do grind extra cash to buy more land, it isn't as satisfying saving up money to purchase an empty square on the map. Due to me playing at the end of the game's life cycle, I was given free land expansions every 12 hours, which helped as I was able to unlock squares for free. But whenever I hit that wall of having enough money for a new building, but not enough for the land as well, it felt awful. I can understand the playable space needing to grow over time and needing to use cash to do that, but they got the balance with the pricing wrong here. Empty land will never be as interesting or rewarding as getting new buildings, characters, or even decorations, yet you're forced to use large amounts of cash for land. You shouldn't have to choose between min-maxing earnings and how you want your town to look, not so directly anyway. The pricing being dynamic is also just awful. Why does expanding my town in one direction cost so much more money than another square elsewhere? It's all empty land, why take away that freedom of choice from the player? Why isn't all the land priced the same? You could still increase the price of the land as you buy each square, but as an alternative, each land expansion could go up slightly for all squares, rather than just having arbitrary fixed amounts. If you play this game enough, you're not going to care about this as much, as you'll get a big enough Springfield eventually, and the game lets you store buildings you don't like. So there is a point where these mechanics become less important, but it requires a huge grind to get there. I already mentioned this game can feel like work, and nothing reinforces this more than having to grind to unlock an empty space just to have a chance to play something down. This is the biggest problem with the game, and it's ultimately a balancing issue that I'm surprised they never fixed. If they standardized the land expansion pricing so it's the same no matter where you buy it, alongside a price reduction to make it cheaper than new characters, it would feel so much better, and not step on the more creative aspect of the game with needless grinding. Back to the Krusty Land expansion. As I didn't want to waste cash expanding my Springfield just to fit it with a theme park, I didn't build Krusty Land for a long time. The only reason I eventually did was for this video. I genuinely would have put the entrance into storage and forgotten about it otherwise. Krusty Land introduces a new currency with the Krusty Land tickets. Instead of buying new buildings and decorations for Krusty Land with cash, you instead need to use Krusty Land tickets. You earn Krusty Land tickets from buildings from Krusty Land. Certain characters have separate tasks which will give you tickets, and you can also earn tickets by tapping on guests from the park. Once you build the Krusty Land entrance, people visiting the theme park will start appearing and you can tap on them for tickets. This was a recurring idea with Tapped Out. Updates and events would have their own specific currency, and you would need to complete event quests and tasks to earn that currency to unlock the new content that was being added. One of the problems with the Squidport expansion is that you had to use cash in order to build the Squidport. This sounds fine, but when you're trying to decide what to do with your cash, it's hard to justify spending it on the port when you can expand and get new characters in the main Springfield. This choice is also a positive about the Squidport update, as it's letting the player decide what to do, but using cash for every update would have divided the player's attention even further. With Krusty Land, by having a separate currency, it means you can earn cash and tickets at the same time, and expand both Springfield and Krusty Land alongside each other. It removes the decision making in favour of giving you more stuff to do. It's a shame you still need money to even make room for Krusty Land, but I've complained about that enough. I'm going to get this out of the way. The Krusty Land expansion is the worst one out of the main four I looked at. The positive is that it allows you to make your own mini theme park, and thanks to the unique floor you can put down and the different attractions, you can make an area that really stands out from the rest of Springfield. If you're trying to put together a Krusty themed park, it delivers that, but progressing through Krusty Land is a chore. The pace that you unlock the content is very slow, and it makes the expansion boring to play. It starts with you unlocking the Krusty Land shuttle, that originally would take players to the separate area that Krusty Land was in, but now it does nothing. You then get the entrance, which looks nice, but you have to find the space for it, and by itself it doesn't do anything. The first actual building you get is the ring toss, although it's actually a decoration and not a proper building, and to progress the Krusty Land quest, you need Cletus to run the stall, which takes 12 hours, and then have Homer play it 3 times, which takes 4 hours each. When you can unlock buildings, they have much longer build times than the base content. The first ride you get is the Death Drop, which takes 12 hours, and most rides take at least 24 hours to build. I didn't get far enough to unlock it myself, but the Tooth Chipper ride takes 5 days to complete according to the Simpsons Tapped Out wiki. The only characters you get are mascots for the park, which are okay, but it leaves the main appeal of the update being just the content you unlock, rather than any fun gameplay. To get the Krusty Land content, you have to wait through such long build times, and in between that, take part in quests which are frankly uninteresting. It's a loop of weak dialogue, long character tasks, and then even longer build times. That's not even considering any time you don't have enough Krusty Land tickets for what you want and would need to grind to get more. It's poorly balanced to the point where it's hard to enjoy. There are minigames you can play based on theme park attractions, but they're very basic. They only barely qualify as minigames. They're harmless, just not worth the trouble to unlock them. I didn't like this update, and that's not even considering that Krusty Land isn't really a thing from the show. It is vaguely mentioned on rare occasion, but it's Itchy and Scratchy Land or Mount Splashmore that are the actual places that the family visit, at least during the Golden Age. Krusty Land is more of an idea that exists outside of the show, similar to something like Bartman. Krusty Land was strangely the second level in both the Simpsons arcade and Itchy and Scratchy Land in Miniature Golf Madness on the Game Boy. It's only being used here as a way to have a generic Simpsons theme park that random rides and attractions from different episodes can be added into. I'm glad this got replaced by Itchy and Scratchy Land eventually, as that's really what this update should have been originally. The next expansion came in July 2015 with Springfield Heights. After building the drill from the Who Shot Mr. Burns episode, you then build Red Blazer Reality, which unlocks Cookie Kwan. This enables you to open up a tunnel to the north part of the map, which opens up a brand new area called Springfield Heights. At Springfield Heights, you find new buildings as you expand, and these buildings allow you to generate new resources which are exclusive to unlocking content in Springfield Heights. It starts with making furniture, and then coffee, smart tablets, yoga mats, and it keeps going with a range of items associated with the rich and famous. The game always had a mountain range at the top of the map, and you could always see there was space there but could never go through the mountains. There was a large mystery about this space. I remember when I was first playing this game really wanting to go there, so it's awesome that they eventually opened it up and expanded Springfield even more. When I first saw all those different resources and things to grind, I was worried. It was more resources to grind on top of what you already have to do for the main game, so I feared the worst. Surprisingly, Springfield Heights is probably the best version of Tapped Out's gameplay loop. The goal for Springfield Heights is to increase the overall value of the area. You have a total cash value for everything you have in Springfield Heights, and you need to increase it in order to unlock more buildings. Each building you add increases the value, and you need to use different resources for different buildings. Each resource can be generated by a set number of characters, so the loop becomes generating resources in order to build new buildings, which increases the value of Springfield Heights, which allows you to build more buildings, as well as unlock the ability to generate new resources. What I like about this process is how it rewards being active in a way that the rest of the game doesn't. Each resource is generated with tasks that have different timers, so you start with furniture that takes 30 seconds, then move up to coffee that takes 2 minutes, then smart tablets that take 5 minutes, and it keeps increasing from there. It means it's very worthwhile to keep the game open and rotate between these tasks to keep getting more and more resources. While the tablets are being made over 5 minutes, you can make coffee a couple of times with different characters, and all while that's happening, you can make furniture every 30 seconds. In the downtime when you're not tapping, you can also start rearranging Springfield Heights and make it look the way you want, or spend time on the rest of your town knowing you're going to get more resources very soon. For the rest of the game, it does offer shorter tasks to earn cash and XP, but you get so little that it barely feels worth it. It's better to set tasks which are at least an hour long and come back later, as you don't earn enough to make it worth sticking around in the game. In Springfield Heights, each time you generate resources is very much worthwhile, and you can keep this cycle going. Instead of just encouraging you to play for a few minutes and leave, it rewards playing the game more and taps into that addictive feeling of just one more round of resources because it's always useful to do so. Part of the reason it's worth it is because there's such a big range of things to use your resources on, which are all connected. Even though there's so many resources, you have plenty of uses for all of them. The main one is unlocking new buildings, but you also need them for land expansion, which is still a bit pricey to be honest, but you can upgrade your buildings as well. Upgrading them increases its value, boosting the overall value of Springfield Heights. Each resource has a fixed amount of characters who can generate them, but you can use resources to unlock extra characters to help out, which also increases the maximum number of resources you can have at one time. Decorations also help increase the value of Springfield Heights, so even small amount of resources can be helpful as you can use them to buy decorations. I like how active this version of the gameplay loop is, and it gives you a reason to keep playing the game with lots of little rewards to aim for as you build up the area. The buildings can take a long time to complete once you unlock them, but that's not too bad because it gives you a logical place to stop playing, or you can even just keep going if you want to unlock more. You can grind resources to unlock a new building and stop playing, to come back later when that building is finished, or spend a bit more time to maybe buy some more land or upgrade one of your existing buildings. The gameplay is still all about timers, but I like that playing the game directly had a positive impact and I could choose when I was ready to stop, rather than running out of things to do like in the main game. It's balanced, so rather than encouraging you to log in frequently throughout the day, instead you play whenever you want, and the more you play, the more resource you get and the further you progress, regardless of when you're playing. This is what I ended up mostly doing towards the end of my time with Tapped Out, having the app open to play more heights because it would only take me a few minutes to do everything else that I needed to do in other parts of the game. My main criticism of Springfield Heights is that it feels too disconnected from The Simpsons. While the gameplay feels better balanced, the city you're building doesn't feel like you're building up Springfield anymore. Cookie Kwan is the main character of this expansion, who is a minor character in the grand scheme of things, and there's not many quests involving well-known characters. The buildings are on theme with this being a rich area, but it means you have condos and car parks, which are much harder to care about than building Evergreen Terrace or even building up the Squid Port. You don't get new characters here, and for a game that's all about building Springfield, it's hard not to feel let down by this. The quest lines are reduced across the board as well, there's much less dialogue and most of the quests are just improving your Springfield Heights without any extra character conversations. It can make this all feel a bit too generic. They added in a better gameplay loop and removed the Simpsons element, and it makes for a better city builder but a more forgettable Simpsons experience. The final expansion is the monorail. In August 2015, the monorail event took place, which added the ability to build your own monorail in your Springfield. It starts with a questline that's a retelling of the March vs. the Monorail episode, with Lyle Landley returning to town and everyone getting sucked into the idea of a monorail again. To build the monorail, the town decides to build it out of different rubbish, which means you build a garbage dump and different recycling centres to generate different resources which unlock pieces of the monorail. Characters can be assigned to make the resources, but specific characters can only be used to make certain bits of rubbish that you need, similar to what Springfield Heights did. You then convert the rubbish into blueprints to level up the monorail and unlock new pieces. Eventually you earn enough blueprints to upgrade the rail yard that unlocks Sebastian Cobb for your town. Like the other expansions, it's another great idea for the game. March vs. the Monorail is one of the most iconic episodes, so being able to bring content based on it into the game is cool, and the monorail adds a new layer on top of your existing Springfield. It's a shame then that building the monorail isn't particularly fun. You have to produce different rubbish, with the base one only taking 30 seconds. The cans then take an hour, the plastic takes 2 hours, and the glass takes 3. There's a lack of freedom and choice with this. When generating cash, you get to set your character tasks from a range of different timers. That system has its own problems as I've discussed, but that choice is being removed with the monorail. If you want to focus on the monorail, you're going to need to assign characters to all 3 different recyclables, but they all take different lengths of time. If you say go to bed and want to wake up with the monorail quest progress, after 3 hours you'll have a range of characters who have already finished their tasks, when you could have had them earn cash over 8 hours. You're still choosing what you want your characters to do, so you can say have them complete tasks for cash overnight and then in the morning switch them to the monorail, but I wish it wasn't so restrictive. It feels like the recyclables should have a range of timers rather than just one, with the smallest one currently being an hour long. The other problem with the monorail is that you get rewarded track pieces randomly. I wanted to build a nice simple loop around the city hall, but I ran out of pieces to do so. I needed more straight pieces, but to get more pieces, you're grinding more resources, and after trading them in, You're rewarded with a small number of random monorail pieces. I did this a couple of times and I didn't get any proper straight pieces and I ended up giving up. It wasn't worth having my characters perform these very specific tasks, which had very specific timers, to get a very specific resource, to trade that into a different resource, to build that up, to then be given a random chance of maybe getting the piece I wanted. It's the grinding nature of the game overly restricting the city builder part. Why couldn't they let the players choose the pieces they unlock? It would have been more rewarding and encouraged players to plan out their towns and get more invested. Instead, they choose to encourage the mindset of just grinding all the time and hoping for the best. The monorail is a nice addition, but it's disappointing due to the restrictions in the design that's sadly seen across the game. Each of the expansions are great ideas to give new ways to build up your Springfield in different ways, and they all offer a range of new content. I had problems with all of them, but it's hard to properly and fairly evaluate this content when it's all been crammed into the game before it went offline. This content was designed for players who played regularly for years, those who enjoyed the gameplay loop but tapped out and wasn't bothered by the grind as much as other players, and from that perspective, the content is better than I'm likely giving it credit for. There were 252 content updates over the years Tapped Out was online, so sadly I can't go into detail on all of them. Instead, I'm going to sum up the main content updates that came out each year. There were 3 types of content updates: increasing the level cap, limited time events, and one-off smaller updates. Level cap updates allow players to level up further than before, and leveling up to the new level cap gave players access to new characters, quests, and buildings. Limited time events would have new quests and content that could only be completed for the few weeks they were available, and could feature new gameplay features and event-specific currency in stores. The other updates outside of these two were just adding new content into the game, like adding a new item or two that the players could unlock or purchase from the store. The very first content update released in September 2012 and increased the level cap for the first time, going from 20 to 21. This update included Nelson, Martin and Kearney alongside Nelson's house, the Springfield Library and the Springfield Observatory. There was a smaller update in September as well, which added the Duff Racer as a free item. This was to tie into the Season 24 premiere, Moonshine River, with the Duff Racer featuring in that episode. It only appeared in the episode for a few seconds though. If you blinked you wouldn't have seen the car. These tie-ins are a recurring theme in the smaller updates, releasing content the same week of a new episode airing which ties to the episode. The first proper limited time event started at the beginning of October with the event Treehouse of Horror 23. This added zombies into the game which you could squish to get rewards, and the residents of Springfield could turn into zombies. Every character that had been released by this point had a zombie alternative, and they all looked pretty amazing.
March!
There was also a few trick-or-treat costumes for some of the characters. Kang was the only new character added for this update, and he was a premium only character, but the update made up for this elsewhere. Homer, Flanders and Marge all had costumes you could permanently unlock, and the first wave of pets were added into the game. The pets are a type of character that you can have wandering around your Springfield, but they can't be assigned tasks and they don't earn any cash or XP. Each pet that was added by the update was from a Treehouse of Horror episode. There were also plenty of new spooky buildings and Halloween related decorations to unlock or purchase. They also had a question that you would be asked in game, which was about the new Treehouse of Horror episode that aired at the same time. Getting this trivia question right would get you some extra premium currency. The level cap was increased to 24 by the end of the year, with Bumblebee Man and Ken Brockman being added, and Fat Tony was added in another episode tie-in update. In November 2012, there was the Thanksgiving update, which only really added a few balloons. The last big event was the Christmas event, which started at the beginning of December 2012. Both this event and the Treehouse of Horror one had their own event currency. For the Christmas event, you could unlock alternative Christmas versions of the existing buildings and earn Santa coins to unlock the event rewards. The best thing about this event is that they added snow to the game. There were a few events over the years that updated the look of Springfield like this, and it's a shame that these were only available during events and only for a limited time. It gives Springfield such a different feel that it would have been cool to have a few of these available all year round. The main character that was added as part of the event was Barney, and there was a few new pets added, including Funzo and Santa's Little Helper. Gil also appeared, but not as a character, but as someone trying to sell you donuts. Gil sadly never got added to the game permanently, but considering it's Gil, that almost matches his character better. 2013 would largely keep to the same pattern with its updates as 2012, only there were more updates because the game was stable and was fully in the swing of things. The level cap went from 24 up to 37, with notable new characters added being Smithers, Ralph, Lenny and Carl, Rod and Todd, and Patty and Selma. All the characters that I mentioned for the level cap updates also include a building tied to them, like Smithers is unlocked alongside Burns Manor. There were 6 episode tie-in updates for Tap Down 2013, each one linked to an episode from Season 24 or Season 25. Like in 2012, there was a Treehouse of Horror event, a Thanksgiving update, and a Christmas event. They continued to have events that tied into real-world seasonal events, so there was an update for Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and the 4th of July. 2013 would feature the first limited time event based on something specific from the show, if we're not counting Treehouse of Horror. In April 2013, there was the Whacking Day event, where you could whack snakes and trade them in to get rewards. It's a great idea for an event, and Whacking Day is a classic episode, but you can see the characters you unlock start to become less interesting. The characters that got added for Whacking Day were Dredrick Tatum, Miss Springfield, and Lugash. The buildings were a bit better with the Sleep Easy Motel, but you can see them already using more obscure characters, despite still being in the first full year of content updates. Lastly, for 2013, there were the 2 big expansions with Squidport and Krustyland, both launching over the summer. 2014 would take the level cap from 37 up to 48, with notable characters added being Curtin Luan, the blue-haired lawyer, Miss Hoover, and Artie Sif. Rotating content became more prevalent in 2014. As there had been multiple limited time events, they started using new events to give people a second chance to unlock event content that they may have missed. This happened in the Christmas event for 2013, but it can be seen in some of the episode tie-in updates, such as getting a chance to unlock a ghost version of Maud in the Days of Future Future update when she was originally added in the Treehouse of Horror event for 2013. Maud would be rotated back into the store a few times over the years that the game was live, something that happened to the majority of content that's in the game. 2014 included the same seasonal events as 2013, while also adding in the Super Bowl and Easter. In February 2014, there was the Friends Point update. When visiting your friends' towns and tapping on their buildings, you could earn friend points, which had its own set of rewards for leveling up. There were another 7 episode tie-in updates, one of them being part of the Thanksgiving update, with the main tie-in update adding Matt Groening into the game to promote the Futurama crossover episode Simpsorama. Like with Whacking Day in 2013, 2014 had another Simpsons-specific event with the Stonecutters in June 2014. There were no expansion updates this year, but there was a very different type of update, which was the Clash of Clones event. The event was a parody of the game Clash of Clans, which had become huge by this point. This event didn't just add in new character skins based on the Clash of Clans aesthetic, although they did do that too, but it had its own gameplay mechanics. Previous events like Treehouse of Horror did have its own gameplay loop, like with the zombies or catching snakes in Whacking Day, but Clash of Clones took it a step further. It copied and reproduced gameplay from Clash of Clans and added it into Tap Down, like being able to attack buildings to earn gold and being able to level up and upgrade your characters and buildings used in the event. This type of event would become more common over the years, and it was the beginning of the game shifting towards bigger and more complex events that added in more gameplay shakeups. 2015 would be the last year of updates that followed the formula that was used in these early years. Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, Treehouse of Horror, Thanksgiving and Christmas all returned with a mix of new and returning content. Pride Month also got a seasonal event in 2015, alongside an end of school event during that same month. The level cap was increased from 48 up to 59, with notable characters added being Helen and Jessica Lovejoy, Marvin Monroe, Frank Grimes, and Ruth Powers. After no new expansions in 2014, there were 2 new expansions added in 2015, with the Monorail and Springfield Heights. There are only 4 episode tie-in updates in 2015, although there was an increase in alternative smaller updates, like adding the Homer car in March. The Simpsons themed event was the Terwilligers in February, that added Sideshow Bob as a proper character and allowed you to unlock his family members. If you're able to recognize anyone from this lineup other than Cecil, then congratulations, I guess. This event continued the format of having lots of unique event currencies to earn in order to get the event specific rewards. Crafting mechanics in events have become a staple at this stage as well. Arguably, the two biggest events in 2015 were Superheroes and Tap Ball. Superheroes saw multiple characters dress up as their superhero alternatives from the show. After Radioactive Man dies, it causes criminals to appear in the town, which you have to help stop. The event was split into 4 issues, where players had to catch criminals to earn the different event currencies. The most impressive part of this update are the new cutscenes added into the game, which is new animation that uses a classic comic book presentation that fits into the event's theme. The Tap Ball event took place over June and July, with the whole event being football themed. It's a strange choice to have a football event in the summer of 2015, rather than waiting for the World Cup, especially when so many updates were tied into real world dates and events. Once again for this event we have a gameplay shake-up with you being able to build up a squad and there being team management elements as you take on other teams. 2016 is where it becomes harder to give an overview of all the updates, because the ideas and concepts become more varied. The previous events Clash of Clones, Superheroes and Tap Ball became the foundation of future events, choosing to use more specific themes rather than sticking to seasonal events or Simpsons tie-ins. There were definitely still holiday events like Treehouse of Horror in winter, and there were still Simpsons themed events like Deep Space Homer in January, but there were less of these type of events overall. The game was entering its 4th year in 2016, which meant that they had established their fan base, who they needed to keep supplying new regular updates to and keep things interesting with new ideas. The events range from sequels to old events like Superheroes, to brand new but more broad themes like the Wild West, to an event that was just growing a giant tree. Players were either in or out by this point in the game's life. You either stopped playing a while ago, or you were all in and just needed more things to do and see. Events were when they gave out the most original content and provided new gameplay, but it's also where the most money could be made from players, so bigger, more out there events became the new normal. The level cap updates wrapped in 2016, with the final update for level 60 being released in May. Any level reached beyond 60 wouldn't unlock new content and quests anymore, just some extra premium currency. The formula for events had been set, and for the remaining years at Tapped Out, it was committed to FOMO and pushing the limits of events using an unusual mix of weird and generic ideas. 2017 continued the groundwork laid out by 2016. In May, there was the Time Traveling Toaster event, providing a range of content from different time periods. The Christmas update was handled a bit differently this year. Instead of a standard Christmas theme, the event was called The Invasion Before Christmas and combined Christmas with the ideas of aliens invading Springfield. This is despite the fact that the game had already done an alien invasion event back with the Treehouse of Horror event in 2014. The main events for 2018 were Bart Royale, the Springfield Jobs, Itchy and Scratchy Land, Moe's Ark, and Superpowers. I'm not including the seasonal events in this list, but there was always a Treehouse of Horror and Christmas event every year, which were all major events in their own right. Itchy and Scratchy Land would replace Krusty Land, where players had to nuke Krusty Land to make way for the new Itchy and Scratchy Land content. There was a minor event in 2018 called Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 3, which you would assume continued on the storyline from the classic two-parter from seasons 6 and 7. Instead, it's a minor event that just tells a much shorter version of that story, although it's revealed that Mr. Burns wasn't shot by Maggie, and he just hacked into his own pacemaker to try and make cryptocurrencies. It's another example of how bad the stories and writing can get in Tapped Out. Someone who has played for all the events will have to let me know if the writing for the later events was always this bad. Lastly, in 2018, the minor events became much more focused on rotating back in existing content rather than really adding anything new. 2019's main events were Love Springfieldian Style, Game of Games, Flanders Family Reunion, and Simpsons Babies. Having an event where the characters are just babies is never a good sign. It's a classic animation trope that The Simpsons managed to avoid for so long. Over the course of 2018 and 2019, the episode tie-in updates and updates based on specific episodes were starting to be phased out. They still happened, but it was much rarer in favour of sequel events and more random ideas. The main events in 2020 were Black History, Simpsons Wrestling, The Van Houtens, Clash of Creeds Christmas Royale, and a sequel event to Game of Games. The Van Houtens event is for all those hardcore fans of Milhouse that are out there, I guess. The Simpsons wrestling event sadly isn't based on the PlayStation game, instead it's just vaguely wrestling themed. It's cool to see Professor Werner von Braun make it into the update. There's something nice about seeing the first boss from The Simpsons arcade making it all the way into Tapped Out, even though he is technically a reference from the show and not the game. 2021's main events were Love and War, Rise of the Robots, Springfield Enlightened, and Into the Simpsons verse. This might be the least interesting year of updates yet, in part due to how disconnected the events are from the show, but it is mildly saved by the Into the Simpsons verse update. By taking the idea of multiverses that started becoming popular in superhero films, we have a range of alternative costumes that use different art styles. The last few years of the game carried on with this trend seen in 2021. The updates didn't massively slow down, but there were less major events, and it feels like the ideas were really starting to run out. The events became less exciting, despite still using a range of different themes. The lack of connection to the show makes some of these updates feel a bit hollow. If you love The Simpsons but hadn't tried Tapped Out yet by this point, an event like Rise of the Robots isn't going to bring you in. If anything, these events could have been confusing and might have put people off who were trying to play the game for the first time. The main events for 2022 were Cirque du Springfield, Head on Wheels, Dog Days, and Showbiz Showdown. This was the first year where there wasn't a proper Thanksgiving event. There was the minor event The Atom Smasher, but Thanksgiving used to have major events tied to it for every year prior to 2022. For 2023, the main events were A Warm Fire Welcome, Heaven Won't Wait, 4, and Mirror Mayhem. 4 is literally an event based on golf. Now that we've reached the golf event in this list, you can tell that we're nearly at the end of the game's life. I have to give credit to the Mirror Mayhem event. Based on the Death Note parody from Treehouse of Horror 33, it brings the anime art style into Tapped Out, and they look pretty amazing. Maybe it's asking for too much, but I would have loved more content like this, instead of, well, you know, golf and babies. If you needed more ideas and were okay with moving away from the world of the show, at least go a bit crazy and give us more of what the fans had never seen before, using different art styles. For the final year of updates, 2024, there was Fears of a Clown, The Sopranos, Summer of Our Discontent, A Bart Future, and the final ever event to end the game, Taps. The events were rough in the last year. There was a clown event when there was already a circus event. The Sopranos, or however you're meant to say that, is a parody of crime dramas. Summer of Our Discontent was capturing chameleons, and A Bart Future was a time-traveling event when the future versions of the main cast had already been added into the game years ago. Taps, the final event, kept things simple gameplay-wise, mostly having easy quests to complete to allow the Simpsons family and AI to talk about the game and to give it a final farewell. If you can look past all the meta jokes, it was a fitting end to the game. It's extremely impressive how they supported Tapped Out for so long, but it definitely came with a price. It started off with more basic events, tying into holidays, as well as both old and new episodes, before events became bigger and more complex. The first 3 years gave 4 main expansions, and increased the level cap frequently, with new base game content which added well-known characters. After that, the focus became on updates that mixed up the gameplay, with new resources and crafting mechanics, and used concept that strayed further away from The Simpsons itself. They couldn't keep up their momentum over the 12 years, but didn't move away from their formula for events, causing the game to run out of steam. It's still a huge achievement to keep the game going for so long, and keep giving fans a reasons to keep coming back to Tapped Out. The lesser updates don't take away from the great ones and all the creativity that was present. It's a challenge for any game to maintain its identity while pushing out more and more content. Just look at modern games like Fortnite. Fortnite isn't really a battle royale anymore, and their big updates are adding in completely different games that have nothing to do with Fortnite. Tapped Out reached the same issue with content updates years before a lot of the current popular live service games even existed. The main problem with a lot of the updates is that most of them were timed, and people can't experience these events in their original form, which is a giant shame. Even before EA decided to shut the game down, so much of the content and what made the game special was already lost to time. Sure, you could unlock the content using the Vault system, and they added in giant stores towards the end to purchase content, but it's not the same as being there for each event. It's a flaw with modern gaming that has only gotten worse over time, and you can see the groundwork for this in games like Tapped Out. Due to the nature and design of TapDAO, the writing was always on the wall about it eventually disappearing. It was built in due to what that game was. It's time to return to the topic that I briefly mentioned earlier, and is one of the dominant topics when discussing mobile games, and that's how they make money. TapDAO was free so everyone could play it. There was cash that you earned in-game alongside the different event currencies, but throughout the game's life cycle you had donuts. Donuts were the premium currency, as you could purchase donuts directly from the store with real money. The game and all its updates were free for everyone, and they gave you some free donuts such as when you leveled up, but the main way the game was supported was people buying donuts with real money. As part of the shutdown, they took donuts off the store and started giving out free donuts in order for players to play the game however they liked before the game disappeared. Before that, they gave out 350 free donuts for free over the 12 years, according to the TapDAO wiki. There are two main uses for donuts. The first is to purchase premium content. Content is split between free and premium, where the free content you can unlock by using cash, completing quests, or using event currency. The premium content can only be unlocked with donuts, this content being characters, buildings, decorations, etc. As I was given free donuts while I was playing, I did purchase a few premium characters like Hans Molman, Professor Frink and Hans Scorpio. Both Frink and Hans Scorpio also came with their own unique buildings. The second main use for donuts is to skip timers. Instead of waiting for a task to complete in real time, you can spend donuts to auto-complete it and skip the timer entirely. While those are the two main uses, you can also use donuts to purchase cash, essentially converting real money into the in-game cash so you can directly or indirectly use real money to buy whatever you want. If you spend enough money on donuts, you can unlock a much bigger range of characters, skip waiting for quests, and buy whatever content is available. How premium currency is implemented is a big topic when it comes to freemium games, because of the potential moral implications of allowing people to spend as much as they want, and how that relates to addiction, and also how having a premium currency can change the core design of a game. The impact of freemium practices on the games industry is too big to cover in what is a ranking series for Simpsons games, so I'm going to focus on just TapDAO and give my thoughts on how this game handled it. You may reject the game solely on its freemium nature, and that's fine, but for such a sensitive issue, all I can do is describe what the game does and give my take. I can understand why a game like this would have premium currency. They were frequently updating the game with new content and they needed to run those servers, so in order to support the game, they did need a consistent revenue stream. Charging a flat price once to play the game simply wouldn't cut it to maintain the game for so long, and having separate expansions that you pay for would split the user base too aggressively. I like that everyone could play the game for free, and every update included free content so the people who weren't paying were benefiting from the continued support. If it wasn't for the premium currency, this game wouldn't have received so much content, and it wouldn't have been around for 12 years, and it potentially would have never been made. Having premium currency means there was a trade-off, and the positive side for players means that there was a much bigger game. Certain characters are locked behind donuts, but I don't mind this too much. You still unlock plenty of characters in the base game, and paying money to get bonus content seems like a fair deal. If I want a specific character, I can make that decision to pay money to get them. Not purchasing them doesn't block progress elsewhere. Buying premium characters and buildings also allows you to get cash and XP quicker, as you now have an extra building generating cash, and you have an extra character that you can assign tasks to. It isn't just that having more characters means you can earn more cash and XP over people who don't spend any money, but they also gave premium characters a cash and XP multiplier. Any task associated to premium content in any way has a higher payout. This seems like an odd thing to do, as they're actively making players who spend money get through the rest of the content quicker. It creates two separate pacings for the game, the paid one and the free one, and it's impossible to balance the game to be satisfying and engaging for both. You're either grinding and getting burnt out because you're a free player, or you're burning through the content as you've paid money, getting more and more content without really earning it. The premium multiplier may exist because once someone spends money, they want you to spend more money, and you've already shown that you're willing to spend money on the game. This means rather than wasting time on free content, they make it so paying players get through the free content faster and then are more likely to purchase more premium content so you have something else to do. That's a cynical explanation, And speaking of cynical, let's talk about the donut pricing. There were multiple bundles available for donuts, and they're priced so the more money you spend on the bigger bundles, the cheaper the individual donuts are. You could buy bundles with thousands of donuts and spend hundreds of pounds on this game. To get a sense of the pricing, if we go back to one of the premium characters, Hans Moleman, he costs 60 donuts to purchase. The bundle of 60 donuts costs £5 or $5. You're spending £5 for just Hans Moleman. He's one character who has his own questline, but it's a very basic story of Hans just doing a range of jobs and there's no real plot. Hank Scorpio's unlocked when you buy his Volcano Lair, which costs 160 donuts. A bundle of 132 donuts is £10 or $10, and you'll need an extra 28 donuts on top of that to get the full 160. These prices are pretty steep. Moleman is one of the cheaper characters, but still costs £5, and you get very little content as it's just one character. The quests for the premium characters are weaker and less interesting than the main quest, and once you finish the premium characters quest, that's it. You spend a chunk of money just to have one extra character or building in your Springfield. It's hard to justify these prices. You don't get enough for how much you're spending. It's worth noting that they did have sales for donuts, but these sales were few and far between and rarely happened during main events. I don't mind the idea of premium exclusive content, but the content doesn't feel worth what they charge for it. It doesn't help that during events, the premium content in those events was only available for a limited time, which put more pressure to spend money during the event, otherwise you might miss out. These concepts are something that has become standard for games as a service titles. Limited time content with premium currency is now a core part of some of the biggest games. Despite the backlash to these concepts, the ideas in freemium games and how they're monetized won out in the end. People may have been upset by Star Wars Battlefront 2, causing EA to backtrack on the loot boxes, but timed events, battle passes, premium currency, these are accepted and highly profitable for companies now. While the pricing in Tapped Out feels high, at least you spend money to get a character you like, and that character helps build your town. In something like Fortnite, you're spending the same amount of money for a skin, but that has to be purely cosmetic to avoid pay to win and keep the game balanced. Tapped Out doesn't feel as bad in comparison to modern gaming, as the game isn't competitive and you can get gameplay benefits after spending money, but I digress. You can use donuts to buy the premium characters, but you can also use them to auto-complete tasks and skip waiting times. I gave this a go, but it created an odd feeling. It wasn't fun to use donuts as you're skipping a core part of the game. Tapped Out, whether you like it or not, is about the timers. It's about both city building and time management. When you remove the timers with donuts that you paid for, it makes the game feel shallow as there's no real gameplay to fall back on. It's nice to unlock more content, but it's boring in the same way that if a video game had a button that let you skip to the end and just win, that would be very unfulfilling. The donuts are there to speed things up if you don't want to engage with the mechanics that you're presented with, but then why play the game in the first place? If there's no investment and reward for that investment, then why even play a video game? I know building Springfield is a big part of the fun and appeal to the game, but placing your buildings isn't enough. It's like buying a Lego set and paying someone else to build it for you. Sure, you now have a finished set that looks good, but you missed out on a major part of why someone buys Lego, making the fact that it's made of Lego pointless. The structure of the game makes it feel like work at times, and it's likely to help sell donuts and make money, but using donuts doesn't fix that issue. You swap out boredom due to the grinding for a different type of boredom because you didn't earn anything. This doesn't stop the game from being fun for a time, but eventually the game becomes less fun because it's shallow and relies on a specific pacing of content to keep it enjoyable so you keep coming back. The correct gameplay pacing is impossible to achieve for all types of players, which is unfortunate because it's free to bring in as many players as possible, but ultimately the game just needs a small group of whales who are willing to spend a lot of money to succeed, and that's exactly what kept it going for so long. More fair pricing for the donuts and premium content would have helped Tapped Out, but it wouldn't replace the shallow aspect of the game. The shallowness and lack of skill required does make it more accessible for a wider audience, but it makes it hard to recommend as it will only be enjoyed long term by a fraction of that same audience. Before I wrap all this up, there's a few random things in the game that I want to quickly mention. It's nearly impossible to cover everything in this game, but there's a few things that I have missed that I think are worth highlighting. There's a daily challenge system, where you can earn extra rewards by completing randomly assigned tasks. It's okay. It functions like any other daily challenge system, and is much better than the daily login reward system that most mobile games have, although Tapped Out did have that system until 2016. You can add your friends who are playing the game as well and visit their towns. They added friend points in 2014, but visiting other towns was always part of the game. It's cool to see how your friends' towns are progressing and how they chose to design their Springfield, although I wasn't able to do that for this video. They give you a fake friend so everyone has a way of earning FP. This fake friend is always a bit better than you, all the way up to level 30. It's hard not to be a bit jealous of this Springfield, but it does give you a few ideas for ways you can customize your own town. Every Springfield, including your own, has its own rating, where the town is rated out of 5 stars based on a range of factors like what type of buildings you have or how many trees and decorations are in your town. A higher rating gives you a higher cash and XP bonus for everything you do, so it's worth doing, but it's something more for those who want to min-max your town rather than build something you like. Towns that have a high ratings do usually look better, but it's going to require spending real money or extra grinding to get those 5 stars. They give you the option to take a picture of your town, which is cool, but the quality of the picture becomes worse and worse as your town becomes bigger and bigger, and eventually the pictures can look pretty bad. It's a nice feature that lets you share your town outside of the game, but a feature that became less useful over time. I also experienced server issues as I played. Sometimes I would get randomly disconnected from the server, even when I was at home on a stable connection. It always saved my progress, so I never lost anything, but it highlights a flaw with the game, and that's that you have to be connected to the server and you're reliant on the server being online and stable to have that smooth experience. You can't play it offline, and that's ultimately why the servers going down is a big blow for fans of the game. Lastly, there were numerous quality of life changes made over the years to make it easier to manage your town. You unlock the IRS, which lets you tap on multiple buildings at once, and there's an XP multiplier so you can get through levels quicker, although it requires donuts to recharge. If you're feeling really brave, you can nuke your town, which puts everything into storage at once so you can redesign it from the ground up. If you're willing to spend the time to replace everything, they give you the extra tools to make it easier to change the town by going back to square one while also keeping everything. I was never brave enough to do this. I found myself too attached to the layout of my town to want to rearrange it in such an extreme way. Back in 2016, they added the ability to rush tasks. This means that after 90% of the time needed for a task had passed, you can select that character and rush the last 10% for free. It's a really nice feature, and it means that if you're playing the game a couple minutes earlier than expected, you're not forced to wait for tasks to finish by just sitting there and doing nothing. You can't rush everything in the game, but the extra flexibility it gives you is very appreciated. There's also the Office of Unemployment, which allows you to set everyone's tasks at once. I really wish I unlocked this during my time with the game. It would have been very useful with how many characters I had to manage by the end. The task technically becomes available at level 37, so I could have got it. I just didn't do enough of the quest to reach the level 37 ones. This building could have been unlocked sooner, but that's a minor complaint all things considered. It might not sound like it, but I had fun with The Simpsons Tapped Out. It's difficult when playing these type of games not to come away seeing them more negatively, because they're designed to be played for multiple times a day, every day, for years. With traditional video games, you have a logical stopping point once you see the ending and watch the credits, which allows the game to be satisfying and for you to look back more positively on the overall experience. With Tapped Out, it doesn't end. There's always more content, which means you either never stop playing, or you stop playing due to getting burnt out and you leave your town incomplete. By design, there's no satisfying endpoint. The best case is that you say, that was fun, and stop playing on your terms, but even then, you're choosing to stop playing something that wants to keep putting you in. This is true for online multiplayer games as well, but they have a competitive appeal which you don't get here. I ended this game on a negative note, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy my time with it. It does make it difficult to determine whether The Simpsons Tapped Out is actually a good game. This is much more complicated than any other games I've looked at so far, so let's try and break it down a bit. Does this game work as a mobile city builder? Well, it does a good job of explaining the mechanics, and there's a good amount of customization to build different versions of Springfield. I haven't really talked about this much, but there's no real control issues, and being a mobile game, it's easy to jump into anytime you want. There's an addictive quality of taking your small town and building it up over time, with the expansions giving you different ways to do so. There was so much content after 12 years that there's plenty to do and always different quests to complete and things to unlock. The timers create an interesting relationship between the player and the game, which you don't get with normal video games, but unfortunately it leads to the game feeling more like work at times. I was playing this game multiple times a day, every day, and one day I was just busy so I never logged in, and there was a relief to doing that. It was nice not having to manage all those timers, not having to set up all my tasks to try and get as much cash and XP as possible. To the game's credit, it gives you a range of tasks with different timers, so you can set it up so you only log in once a day if you wanted to. The game does punish you for playing less. It wants you to engage with it as frequently as possible in the hopes that you'll spend real money, and it's so strange to play a game that both pushes you to be burnt out by it, but also gives you tools to manage that burnout. There's no skill here which makes it accessible, but it's replaced by grinding or a shallow experience if you choose to spend real money. There's certainly worse games for grinding out there, but other games usually have different mechanics that can be enjoyed as well. Also, the customization is limited compared to other creative games. You're more rearranging the stuff you have rather than being able to edit and create anything original, as you can't edit buildings, and some extras like different weather effects were limited to time events, so it doesn't come close to the range of options that games like Minecraft have been able to accomplish. That might seem unfair, but there are more fleshed out city builders out there, even with the insane amount of things available to add into your town. The limitation of the city building elements is to help your town match the show and make it feel like the world of The Simpsons. The next question then is it a good Simpsons game? How well does it represent the show? Making your own Springfield is such a good idea, and they were able to make something that looks very close to the show's actual animation. With so much history to pull on, they crammed this game full of content, and it creates an encyclopedia of The Simpsons. The recognizable characters and references never stop. It takes full advantage of having so much material to use. This did wane as the game went on though, relying on ideas that really didn't fit in with the show at all and were either generic or parodies. The writing is done by the show's creative team, making it better than expected, but the writing is very much modern Simpsons, with too many fourth wall jokes and winks to the audience. The voice acting is a mixed bag, despite getting the actual cast to do the voices, and from time to time, the characters can look a bit off. It's successful as a Simpsons game overall, but the cracks are there, which are mostly caused by it being made in 2012. The final question I want to ask is, did the game make the most of its potential? Is this game a bit of a waste? Being a freemium mobile game, it's hard not to imagine a proper full version of this game on PC, where it could look better, have better controls, and remove the microtransactions to allow you to focus on making your own Springfield. It's a nice idea to think about, but the gameplay simply isn't here to support that concept. The gameplay is the timers. When you remove them, you're just reading dialogue, placing buildings, and nothing else. It's designed to lack gameplay in order for anyone to be able to play it and for anyone to spend money on it after downloading it for free. Would a proper PC version be nice? Sure, but Tapped Out could only exist in its current form. It was designed to capitalize on a specific market, and history proved that it was correct to do so with how many games use the same ideas. I don't think that makes it bad as is, and I still think there were merits in experimenting within the mobile market with new approaches to interaction and a player's relationship with a game, but you're not left with something with a true soul. It's enjoyable for a time, and there's an appeal to tapping to make Springfield. It's even charming for someone who loves The Simpsons, but it requires a dedication to the game to keep playing frequently for years that isn't reasonable for an average player. For ranking Tapped Out, this is a competently well made game that does a good job representing The Simpsons, so it shoots up the list quickly on that alone. It's better than Krusty's Funhouse, and I'll say it's better than Bart's Nightmare on the SNES. Tapped Out can be fun, but eventually becomes a chore, where Bart's Nightmare is inconsistent with the controls and design, causing that game to be frustrating. It makes Bart's Nightmare uneven, but in a very different way to Tapped Out. That brings us to The Simpsons Arcade. I feel like the question here is, what do Tapped Out and The Simpsons Arcade successfully capture about The Simpsons? Tapped Out captures almost the entire history of the show, but this is done through the lens of The Simpsons from season 23 onwards, using a mobile freemium game. It has real worth, but there's a bit of an asterisk when it comes to what it delivers as a Simpsons game. It's an amazingly comprehensive and creative experience to some, and a shallow waste of time created past the peak of The Simpsons to others. The Simpsons Arcade captured The Simpsons in a much more specific and unique way. It's a talented Japanese developer, Konami, using their beat-em-up formula to interpret The Simpsons into an arcade game when they had very little from the show to work with. The game has its flaws with overly basic level design even for a beat-em-up, and the later enemies have too much health, making the game repetitive, but there is nothing else like The Simpsons Arcade. It's very creative, and it's a one-of-a-kind time capsule for the show's beginnings. The Simpsons Tapped Out could have been made at any point during the modern era of The Simpsons, and it would have been the same. The Simpsons Arcade truly represents when it was made, which makes it stand out as there's nothing else like this. This means I'm putting Tapped Out underneath The Simpsons Arcade on the list. Tapped Out still deserves a lot of respect, and in terms of content and references, it's miles ahead of The Simpsons Arcade. My bias is likely on full display here. Both games have issues with their execution, so it comes down to their concepts and what that represents, and that makes me lean towards The Simpsons Arcade. I wasn't too sure how I was going to feel when Tapped Out was finally shut down. I played it for several months before it went, and experienced both fun and disappointment. There was always a lot of charm to this game and making your own Springfield, checking in every day and unlocking so many iconic characters and buildings with a few tabs. It was hard not to like the game even if it doesn't always seem to like you. Breaking the game down is a flawed product with the hollowness of the current state of the franchise being on full display. I decided to be in the game when the servers were shut down. As I hadn't been playing the game for years like a lot of fans and my town was relatively quite small, it wasn't a huge moment for me, but it was still sad. I set all my characters with tasks that had unique animations, and I left my phone on Grandpa feeding the pigeons. The servers went down at 11 PM UK time on the 24th of January, and that was it for the game. It was easy to break the game down and look at all its flaws when it was this greedy mobile game that EA had been supporting for years to get everyone's money, but now that it's gone, I look back on the game fondly. It was easy to play, easy to enjoy, easy to stop playing, and even easier to criticize. Tapped Out was part of a huge trend that completely changed the video game industry. A trend that even EA probably didn't fully see coming. This means there's so much I could discuss about modern gaming, but ultimately this is about a family of yellow fictional characters and wanting to play fun video games with them in. As of February 2025, we don't know what the future holds for new Simpsons games. Will there be a hit and run remake? Will there be a brand new game? How long will the show even go on for to make a new video game even viable? I'm greedy and I will take whatever I can get, as long as the idea of Simpsons video games doesn't get forgotten. To that end, I'm grateful that something like Tapped Out could exist for so long, even if its longevity was for the wrong reasons. With Tapped Out gone, it means there are no current Simpsons games, and who knows if we the fans will be better or worse off for it. Either way, Tapped Out, and even EA, deserve a lot of credit, and now all we can do is hope that something great is just around the corner. And that's The Simpsons Tapped Out added to the list. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this look at Tapped Out, please consider giving this video a like or leaving a comment below. I'll see you next time for the Itchy and Scratchy game. I've delayed it long enough. It's time to give Acclaim's final Simpsons game the time in the spotlight. Unless another Simpsons game gets cancelled, of course.